Hello and welcome students. In this video we are going to talk about the plasma membrane, and basically we'll start with the very first basic definition of plasma membrane. We'll denote it by PM, and the very basic function of a plasma membrane is to define the borders around the cell, just so the materials inside the cell and outside the cell can be separated, and that happens with the help of plasma membrane. Alright, next point of note taking is that plasma membrane is semi-permeable in nature. Now, semi-permeable basically means that materials can move freely through it. Some materials can move and some cannot. So it allows the movement of materials. All right, point number 3 is going to be that plasma membrane is made up of phospholipids. Next point, the phospholipids for the plasma membrane are comprised of 3 subunits. Now let us take a look at what those 3 subunits are. The first one is a phosphate group. Next part is a glycerol molecule. And next thing is 2 fatty acid chains. All right, so on the next page we will move on further about the plasma membrane. So point number 5, the structure how we show the structure is basically there is a little circle by which we show the head of the plasma membrane and then the tails. So the top part is called the head, and it's basically a phosphate group. The phosphate group is actually hydrophilic in nature. It loves water. Or we can also say that it's polar in nature. Now we will take a look at the bottom, the tails, which are non-polar in nature or hydrophobic. They don't like water. All right, how do we show the complete setting of a plasma membrane is usually shown in your books and worksheets, etc., like this. So it has the 2 tails and the head. And then the other side. So that's basically how the structure is shown. And then the inside of the cell is an aqueous solution. That means that there is a watery liquid inside it. Now the heads of the plasma membrane are facing water as they are hydrophilic in nature. Now on the next page, we will look at a deeper view of the structure of the plasma membrane. So let us have a look at the next page, and it is point number 8. All right, so now we are going to show you a structure of the phospholipid as to actually how the structure is. So we'll start with the very first glycerol molecule. And along with the glycerol molecule, we have a fatty acid chain. Now, as you can see that one of the fatty acid chain is saturated and the other one is unsaturated. And the reason for this being unsaturated is the double bond here. All right, now along with that, we are going to show the phosphate group here, which is going to be attached along with the glycerol molecule. So here is basically your glycerol. These are your two fatty acid chains. One unsaturated and the other is saturated. And this piece is actually your phosphate group. Now the phosphate group is also attached to a nitrogen atom, as I've shown you over here, along with 3 other methyl groups attached to it. So another important detail to remember, that the phosphate group is attached to a nitrogen atom, which is further attached to 3 methyl groups. All right, on the next page, we will take a look at the fluid mosaic model of the plasma membrane. So basically, the plasma membrane of a cell is described by this model, and the basic meaning of the fluid mosaic model is that the membrane has a fluid character, is fluid in nature. Now, what does that mean? That basically, in scientific terms, it will mean that phospholipids and proteins are free to move through the membrane. All right, so let us take a look at how the movement actually happens in the plasma membrane. So we'll again draw the structure like I shared with you earlier. All right, so now we are going to show an integral protein inside the plasma membrane, and the name of this is called integral protein. All right, next one, this one somewhere here, these type are called peripheral protein. And then any proteins that are found on the surface of the plasma membrane, not inside, not on the side, but just on the surface, are called surface proteins. So integral proteins are embedded in the cell membrane. Surface protein, as you can say by the name, on the surface of the plasma membrane. And peripheral basically means on the side. So on one side you can see that the protein is available. All right, let's move on to the next page. And basically, we are also going to talk about the next thing that is available is a cholesterol molecule. Can be found in the plasma membrane. And then again, drawing the plasma membrane for you, just to understand how the cholesterol molecule is being shown. Just to save time, I'm drawing like this. So here we can have a cholesterol molecule. Now cholesterol has a hydroxyl group with 4 infused rings. And the purpose of cholesterol, the presence of cholesterol here, is to maintain the fluidity of the membrane. So not all cholesterol is bad, as you can see, And what basically cholesterol helps with it is also that it acts as a spacer and keeps the materials apart from each other. All right. So we were taking a look at the plasma membrane. So point number 8, we will call this 9 as our fluid mosaic model. And on the next page, we are going to take a look at point number 10, where we are going to take a look at active and passive transport. Now basically, why are we studying transport? transportation among the cells and through the cells is continuously happening. You don't even know, but your body, or each and every little minute piece of your body is working just so the metabolic activities or your body can function biologically in every way, and we don't even come to know that it is happening. So in that regard, we need to understand how the cells are transporting materials throughout the cell or throughout the body. For example, if we need to transport materials, the trucks are used. A lot of material is transported using big heavy trucks. So let us see how cells are going to actually transport their materials. And there are basically two ways in which cells transport materials. So the first point under this is that cells transport materials like glucose, water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, sodium ions, calcium ions, and potassium ions to maintain a certain internal environment. All right, so we'll have the next point, that plasma membrane also come into picture. As the materials are going to be transferred through them. All right, so on the next page, first let us just write down here that there are two types of transports that happen in cell. They are called active transport and passive transport. So on the next page, we are going to take a look at the difference between active and passive transport. So we'll make a T-chart here, passive transport, and let's draw a line. And this side is going to be active transport. All right. So basically the first point of definition is when the transport of materials does not require energy. So basically what it means is that the cell doesn't have to use any of its energy to transport the materials. Now an example for a passive transport is diffusion. Now basically I'll show you with a diagram also, or a little picture, a rough picture, So let us say this is the plasma membrane. And we have a high concentration of oxygen molecules here in this area. And what will happen is that we'll call this high and we'll call this low. Low means we maybe have just 2 oxygen molecules. So what will happen is in a passive transport, the oxygen molecules will travel or get transported from high concentration to a low concentration. So they can be transported here easily through the plasma membrane. This can also be taken as an example. Let us say we are, trying to throw a ball, from a very high concentration, from a very high place to a low place. Now you can see that whenever we are throwing something from top to bottom, it is easy because the gravitational pull comes into picture. So it's just a way of looking at it. There will be not a lot of energy used as compared to its opposite. So there's no energy used here, where this type of transportation is going to be called passive transport. All right, now let us take a look at active transport. Now the definition of active transport, by now I'm sure that you have an idea about it, that the transport that requires the cell's energy to be used. So transport of materials that requires the use of energy. So basically ATP is the energy that the cell is going to use or apply in order for this to be accomplished. So let us see how that happens. So there is a plasma membrane again, and we have the integral protein. And what will happen is, let us say we have sodium ions, very high concentration in this side. And then I have low concentration sodium ions over here. Now, if we need sodium ions from low concentration to high, the cell is going to transport the sodium ions from a low concentration area to a high concentration area. And for that, the energy that is going to be used is going to be cell's energy in the form of ATP, and this type of transport is called active transport. So how could we actually see it in another way to remember? Now if I'm going to take this piece of rock, so if I'm going to take this piece of rock and pull it up, it's going to actually take a lot of energy because I'm going against gravity as I'm going to pull it up. So more energy is needed. In this. All right, so that was about it. It was a pretty long video, so I hope it made some sense to you, and we'll continue with more topics related to this plasma membrane concept, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you for watching. Have a good one. Bye.